there, Mama. I'm Courtney Cecil, proud mom of two boys and an organizational culture and behavior change executive. And I'm a believer in building a movement to help the burned out, overwhelmed working moms reclaim their control and free time so that they can confidently remain in the workforce without losing the sanity or themselves. Now, let's get started.
Hey, y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome back to another episode of the Life Management System. And inside this one, I am thrilled to be able to host Kanika Chadda-Gupta, a former journalist, CNN anchor, and most especially mom of three, including a set of twins. So Kanika hosts the popular podcast, That's Total Mom Sense, where she interviews public figures on their life lessons. It's something that I personally geek out on. If you haven't listened to it, I'm recommending that. I'm going to drop it in the show notes. So Kanika, welcome to the Life Management System.
Thank you, Courtney. It's a joy to be here. I'm so happy to share this time with you.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, so let's dig straight in. You have had such a storied career that continues to take the most wild and interesting turns and twists, and that's what I'm really excited to bring forward today in our conversation. So, whether that be your job like as an international news anchor for CNN, so cool. And as I recall you telling me, that was actually your dream job. And then you moved on from that to lead a production team for a show where you actually got to exercise a lot of creative liberty. So all of that must have been pretty hard to walk away from. What led you to actually reset your career?
Yes, it was the kids. It was the kids. I have to say, I still remember when I was a 7-year-old Kanika, I idolized the news anchors that I saw on TV, from Connie Chung to Oprah to Diane Sawyer and Barbara Walters. And I just wanted two things in life: to be a television anchor and to be a mom. And I quickly learned, after I had my three kids in 18 months, the twins plus the one, that breaking news is not necessarily conducive to breastfeeding. And so I thought, I have to rewire all of this. I want to take all of my skills in the news business and journalism and apply it to new media where I have more flexibility and freedom in my career. And so I'm so glad I did that. And I actually teed myself up. I had a digital marketing firm for about 6 years, and I did that during the time that my husband Sunil and I were trying. So I knew, I was like, I'm going to make my exit on foray into this, and I'm so glad I did. No regrets.
Good. Well, I'm so happy for you that you've been able to find that. And would also love to just double click a little bit on some of your history related to that decision. So, as an example, you had a very flexible, present mom, and I know that made an impact on your life. How did that influence the type of decisioning you made regarding being able to take a step back in order to be more present for them?
Yes, yes. I have to give a shout out to my mom. Her name is Dr. Karen Chadda, and she has her PhD in industrial psychology. She's the reason why my parents immigrated to the States. Oftentimes, especially coming from a patriarchal society in India, it's, the dad who, it kind of dictates where the family is going to live. But for us, it was mom, and she knew she wanted to continue to study. She earned a second master's degree in psychology and be a professor in the US, because she was already a professor at Jai Hind College in Mumbai in India. And so she did all that. And what she kind of knew as she had me, and then 7 years later, my sister, was that she gets summers off and she gets to like change her hours based on her family life. And when my sister was really young, I was 7 at the time, she decided to cut back and just work part-time. And she said, I'm going to teach morning classes when they're in school. And by morning, I mean like the 9:30 to 11 class, and then the 6 to 9 evening classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, at a local community college. It was Montgomery College near our house. We lived in the suburbs of DC, and it worked for us because she was always there to drop us to school in the morning, and she was home after school. And when she got back into teaching full time, and doing an administrative role. We didn't see her, but I was in high school by then. And I feel like those early years, just having my mom and even my grandma around and how we like had this village is really pivotal for me and for my formative years and my sister.
That's amazing that you recognize that and what a difference you believe it has made in your life. So many of my clients, many of my listeners, in fact, are trying to solve for something very similar. Like they're craving more time freedom, they're craving more stress freedom. And what I try to do with them is double click on what is causing that tension to be able to either create it for themselves and what their existing circumstances are, or be able to completely shift and redo the way they're doing life. But so often, what I find is that there is some sort of historical bias that they don't even realize is like existing in the back of their psyche, whether
Yeah.
it be what their own upbringing was or their partner's upbringing. So, as an example, a lot of my clients have moms who stayed at home and they are just like, mom knocked it out of the park. We had the themed birthdays. She was present for everything. It's just like, homegirl, you can't compare yourself to your mom's standards because she had a very different set of hours to work with than you are. And it's just funny how much that historical bias seeps into our psyche, regardless if we realize it's there or not. And it sounds like
Yes.
you actually were very calculated and intentional because of it.
Absolutely. Yes. And you shouldn't, kind of other yourself and think, oh, I'm doing something that I didn't have in my childhood and that means it's wrong. You have to do what's best for you. And I feel for me, when I had, my twins and then my younger one in that short time frame, I knew they all needed me. And I think I just, of course, felt like I was living under a rock. I had Irish triplets. It was like we had different size diapers, we had different colored bottles. I nursed the first set of twins for a year, and then it's like this third one. I got pregnant when they were just 9 months old. So it was like I was in a fog for a really long time. But I knew that I talked to actually older moms with older kids. I knew that this was a blip in time. They were just like, believe me, when your kids are even just a little bit older, you're going to be looking back on this. And so, yeah, that's what kind of prompted my decisions. And I leaned into that. I was like, I know not everyone's going to make the decisions I'm making. And, um, they might think it's like, me making sacrifices or taking the short end of the stick. But I thought, nope, I'm going to lean into this because my time will come.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Well, Kanika, you also have just a lot of patience and grace as it relates to some of the space you are creating for your husband and his family. So, as I understand it from you, it has been a known fact since your early years in dating him that at one point in time you'd be welcoming his parents into your home in a really very real present way. So, how did you know that that was right for you too? And as opposed to just letting those historical norms superimpose expectations on your decision making. Like you have just been so intentional about stepping into your decisions. So talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Courtney. Yeah, and it's definitely there's a learning curve, believe me. When Sunil and I were first dating, he asked this, like we already talked about, like, so how many kids do you want to have, and where do you want to live, and it just all the hypotheticals were actually really fun. And he said, I want to run something by you because it is kind of a non-negotiable for me. And he said, I'm one of three brothers, I'm the middle brother, as you know, and I'm just really close to my parents, and I want to live near them. And when they're ready and when it's time, I want to have them live with us. So I thought, oh, okay. And he said, I'm not sure what my brothers have planned, but I know for me, that's something that, aligns with my values. And I want to be able to give that back. And I, of course, was like, yeah, that's fine. And I think later on, when I had to let that sink in, of course, it was its own like, wow, this is a big commitment. It made me think back to my third cousin. I'll say her name. It's Ashima. Um, I adored her. And I remember when my husband and I first visited Ashima at NYU. She had moved from the suburbs of Maryland, where we grew up, to be in New York. And, she had pretty strict parents. Most South Asian parents are very, very protective and they give you this sheltered life. She was living in this big bad city. And my then boyfriend, now husband, was like, how'd your parents let you just move out to New York? It's like, it was a big deal for, an 18-year-old girl. And she said, I'm really responsible. And I said, honestly, if we ever have a daughter, I want her to be exactly like Ashima. And she was like blushing. And he said, this is amazing. You're such a great person. Now, how can you attribute that? Like, how did you become so straight arrowed, head on your shoulders? And she said, we lived with my grandparents. And it was just like that's why. And it was like, oh my goodness. Even I had to think that's incredible how indelible the mark is, because when you have a multi-generational household and you have, babies and then the elderly who are 70 plus, there's so much to actually learn there. And it's the most beautiful symbiotic relationship because life is a cycle. And she said, I've always been kind of maternal in nature, responsible, doing the right things, helping my grandparents out. So empathetic, attuned to those around you, people person, because she had her grandparents around who she learned from and helped take care of. And I thought I want to be able to recreate that for my 3 kids. So this is actually a really awesome setup.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's so much that I want to unpack there, and I want to get back to the grandparents thing, but I also just want to recognize too how grounded how important it was that Sunil was so grounded and that that's something he values. And I tell all of my clients, they come in and I say, I want you to default, what is it that you value? And every single one of them says family. And I'm like, yeah, but what does family really mean? Because family, valuing family could mean something totally different to me than it does you. And it clearly does. This is an example. So as an example, I value my boys remaining close to me after they graduate. After they leave home,
Yes,
I want to protect our relationship together. So that way they still want to have me in their life. That is what I value more than anything in the world. And that is exactly why I continue to work, because for me, I need an income that allows us to travel as a family. I love traveling, and allows me to build a home that I believe will magnetize them to come back to us, whether that be with their college buddies or their future families. So it certainly informs my decision making, whereas it certainly has yours too. Because here you are saying that you and Sunil value being close to that older generation, having your kids exposed to their grandparents. So for anybody listening, I would super encourage you to double click on what family means to you. Is that family dinners? Is that raising your kids to have a service or religious oriented heart? Is that to raise them so they are the best academically, so that way they can be financially independent or make their own career related decisions? Is that providing material items because you didn't have exposure to that growing up? Whatever it may be, there's no right or wrong, but just the knowledge of knowing what that double click is on for you can help inform all of your decision making and make you a lot more confident in the decisions, and certainly eliminate a lot of that guilt that so many moms carry around, are we doing right by our kids? That I just
100%.
love that you called that out.
Yes, yes. I think, whenever anyone asks me what's a marker for success in parenting, in your opinion, I would have to say it's that my adult children, when we hit that phase, can't wait to hang out with me.
Yeah.
That means that I've done it right.
Yeah.
Because, oftentimes, we see these adages about you only have 18 summers with your kids. No, I mean, when I'm 70 and my kids are in their 30s, I want more summers with my kids. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
not stopping at 18. I want us to always be together, and obviously not overpower all the different facets of relationships in their life. But like make sure that there's room for that. It's ride or die. Like we are one team.
I love that. I love how you characterize that too. So I want to go back to that grandparents thing again, because this is something you are incredibly passionate about, and encouraging people to expose themselves to different generations, to expose their kids to different generations. But as you well know, you are living this in some way double life, where you have a South Asian, like Indian family, and then you're living in America. And as you know, Americans tend to move away from home. They don't have that level of access that other families might when they live and remain back in other countries. So, talk to me a little bit more about why you believe that multi-generational exposure is important, and how, if any, advice you have on how Americans can facilitate for that, that kind of experience for their kids or for themselves, if they aren't living that, similar cultured story of other countries.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think, we all know the adage of it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to raise a parent too. And we all need that support system in place. It's the scaffolding that allows us all to thrive. And sure, we can manage without it. And, in the US, my parents immigrated when I was 2. We've been living in a nuclear family, and that's just how it goes. But I feel like you have to create the village from scratch, so that you're not doing this alone. It is not sustainable. It's just not. And so, just to give you some stats, I was listening to a TED talk by Liz Leon recently, and she said that 70% of new parents reported being less happy in the first 2 years. And the average new parent experiences a severe drop in happiness, and a drop that's greater than divorce and losing a partner. And so when you don't have that village, it can be dire straits, and it's just for our own mental health, right? We don't talk about it all the time, but when you're genuinely happy and when you're completely burnt out. And so I think it behooves us to not create this village. And so if you can make decisions to move near family, it's a huge upending, but the dividends are there, believe me. Do it. Just do it, especially when you have young kids. If you can make that work. An example of a guest that I had on, and he's someone that I really admire, Sahil Bloom. He did exactly that. So he wrote the book, 5 Types of Wealth. And he really got into this space of, he was like this internet sensation phenomenon by like the content that he was putting out. There's this graph that he shared, which was very, very telling. It was basically time spent doing XYZ, hours per day, and age. And so he starts it with family. And obviously, in your early years till 18, maybe 20, your time spent with family is really, really high. And then it's like a hockey stick all the way. When you're starting your career and starting your own family, and in your own elder years, the time spent with your core family, siblings, it just drops. And then with friends, it's limited in the beginning. How many play dates can we have? And then it spikes when you're in your college years. And then it tapers again when you're, if you have a family or child rearing again. Time spent with partner, once you find that person, increases and is there, usually till the end of life, whoever that companion is for you. And then time spent with children, it peaks in those early years for them, and it could be in your 20s, 30s, 40s. And then 50s onwards, again, it's just this drop, like you barely see your kids. And so he was just like, this is, really morbid to think about. And he actually wrote his book based on a conversation he had with a friend who's like, oh, so, how's it going? You're in iBanking, you're like, how's life? And he's like, yeah, I'm really busy. And he said, like, if you could wave a magic wand, like, what would you want to do? And he's like, I wish I could just spend more time with my parents. I miss them. I just don't see them. My work hours don't permit. And then he did a quick like number crunching at the back of the head and said, well, you probably only have like 15 years left with your parents. And if you only see them once a year, like that's 15 more instances that you're going to have with them. And that hit him like a ton of bricks. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's insane. Growing up every day, my kids remind me like how they're so excited to wake up. These are the faces you see in the morning, and at bedtime after stories, these are faces you see at night. All of a sudden that changes when they're older. He said, I need to change that. And so he moved from the West Coast to the suburbs of New York where his parents were. And they had their first child shortly after they moved. So he's just really happy that, this little kiddo has grandkids around. And was that a huge move and a career shift? Absolutely. Absolutely. But he wrote a book about how he loves that he made that decision. So I just kind of want to, throw that out there that like, it's not going to be convenient. It's going to be extremely difficult and uncomfortable. But wherever that village is for you, maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's really, really good friends, but be around them.
Yeah, I'm going to try to find that graph and link it in the show notes for anybody
Yes.
interested.
Yeah.
And I'll also link his book. It is one of the top all-time books I recommend anybody that will listen and is interested in self-development or reflection that they read. But it's also ironically very similar to how I've constructed my own program. So my program for my clients is called the Life Management System, and it is not certainly branded in the way that he has his 5 types of wealth, but it's the same type of philosophy. So I'm actually going to get back to Sahil, but before we do that, I want to ask you a question that to kind of tee up the context for that. So when you made like completely switching gears here, Kanika, when you left a lot on the table when you decided to leave your own like traditional career and to
Yeah.
build the one that you have now. You left like the connection you had with your team, you left reliable finances and all
Yeah.
that enables, that sort of thing. Why do you believe, or what do you believe is probably the better way to put it, that some of your highs and lows are with that decision of resetting your career? And maybe even
Yes.
to like what specific value did you have that gave you the confidence in that decision?
Yes, absolutely. Um, okay, we can start from the lows and work our way up. The lows were, just the fear and the doubt that I felt about starting something new, and just like fearing that I was going to become irrelevant. Because I do feel like if you've charted a traditional career path, and for me it was broadcast journalism and news, it was like I have to be on TV. You need to see, whatever story I'm covering on the ticker, and you got to see my name. It's called a CG, character generator. You got to see the CG of my name right underneath my talking head, and then that's going to give me validation. The same way those who come from print have a byline. It's so much of our identity. And so that was the low that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually walking away. I always, had this dream of like being in television for the long haul. But the highs were just like knocking everything out of the park. And I thought, this is why I'm making this trade-off. I wanted flexibility and freedom. I wanted to cover my own stories. I don't have a news director or a producer in my ear. I get to decide which guest we have on the show. I have a network and, of course, a team to run it by. However, it's still, my show, which is awesome. And I think just to have that autonomy is great. And then it allowed me to create the same schedule my mom had. So, my reporting hours are between 9 and 3. 3 o'clock is pickup. So 2:30. And that's when I turn into a pumpkin and I got to go pick up my kids. And that is absolutely fine. If that's a non-negotiable for me, it's great. It's really nice to have that empowered feeling of I make my schedule. And so if anyone wants to do a Zoom, I don't care who the guest is. If that's at 6 p.m. and that's dinner time, I can't do it. and I love that. I wouldn't be able to have that if there's breaking news or, you got to go travel for this story. And so that's why I made the decision. And I think that's been exciting. And also just being ahead of the curve, because I already saw how the media landscape is like changing dramatically. Even when I went into my master's program, my professor is a legend. His name is Sam Roberts, and he was the executive producer to Walter Cronkite for 30 years. So to learn from him was a gift. Mouth like a sailor, but we learned a ton. And it was just like, whether we were on the anchor desk or out on the field reporting or manning the teleprompter uh, or the video camera, there are many different roles in a newsroom, and he knew each one inside and out, and he wanted his team of graduates to as well. And so it was great to learn from him. But he also kind of warned us. He's like, media's changing. I had my prime and I had my heyday working with the top newsmakers in the world. But now with photojournalism and digital media and all things that are under this new media umbrella, you guys got to take all these skills you're learning and reinvent, because I don't know what's on the horizon. And now in this age of AI, even more so, even more so. And so to be able to take his advice. And, when I launched the podcast 6 years ago, I thought I'm taking all my production skills and my script writing and everything. But now, and it's still an interview format show, much like we do on, a Dateline or a 2020, me and my, armchair expert with a guest, same exact format, but the medium is different. And it allows my audience to tune in whenever they want, as passively listen. And so I thought, I got to go all in. And when you think about it, again, if there are those who like uniquely understand my career trajectory, because they're in it too, like look at the news anchors of today. I love Katie Couric's newsletter and her Substack. I love Hoda Kotb's podcast. So those who are on TV now are still doing all the other stuff. And so if you decided to lean in and start your own entrepreneurial journey where you're doing only that, believe me, now you're kind of ahead.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hoda.
Yeah.
All Hoda. She is my favorite, but she also happens to be a Hokie, which is that much, endears her to my heart that much more.
Ooh,
I know.
amazing. She's the best. She's the best in her
She's
books.
just
And
so cool.
ooh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, like, you got to lean into this new media thing.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
Well, one of the things that you said that I think is so astute is that you were recognizing that your brand was not necessarily dependent on your job. There's one of my current clients actually. One of the things we've been working through is helping her make the decision on whether or not she walks away from her current career and the way it's been structured. And I was like, listen, friend, the thing that I'm hearing you say is that you have worked so hard to build this brand. In your mind, your everybody else's perception of you is dependent on this career progression you've been making. But guess what?
Yeah,
You are giving all of your power away to them and are too focused on what you believe others expect of you, as opposed to creating the space that you believe you need to fill for yourself. So I love that you called that out.
absolutely. Yes. Yes. I love it.
Okay, so last question before we get to the lightning round. Many of the listeners here are very connected with the idea of high achievement and would consider themselves borderline perfectionists and that sort of thing. And it's just so hard to be at peace when that is the space that you swim in. Yet, Kanika, what I respect the heck out of is when I ask you about your current career plans, like, yes, you've got podcasting, yes, you've got speaking, but you commented to me I'm fulfilled where it is. So this is where Sahil Bloom's words come back. Like you have essentially reached, in his language, the enough life. And I gather that there was something like super punny play on words here, like that you used your mom sense to
Yeah.
know that. Like how I did that. So
Mhm.
what advice would you give to someone who's feeling that tug to do more when in all reality, it's really not the right time of life for them to do it?
Yes, yes. I think it's so important to dream and be ambitious and be a perfectionist. I like am basically have OCD. I have everything in its place. I'm super meticulous and detail oriented. I always have been. But I think you have to realize that everything will come in time. So you can't have it all at once. It's like that other, saying that we hear all the time. You can have it all, but not all at the same time. And some people don't agree with that, but I do. But you're the decision maker. You're in the driver's seat, so you get to decide what you have at that time. And for me, I knew that I wanted to have a career and the autonomy and freedom in media. And I wanted to work with all these big brands, which I'm doing from Meta to Lexus. Like, it's amazing. But I didn't have that when I was postpartum and had, like a newborn and two infants, I couldn't have it right then. And I feel like you have to allow yourself that grace and that space to say it's not going to happen right now. There's no such thing as a snapback. There's no bounce back in my career, and this pause is actually a welcome pause. It's a very like quick reframe, but instead of telling yourself every day, oh my God, I have to get this in, these deliverables done by this deadline. I have to like go pick up the kids from school. I have to cook dinner. I have to tell yourself, I get to. It's a privilege. I get to do all of these things. I am able bodied and I get to. And so if you told me, I'm 42 now, at 35, that like you'll do everything you ever dreamt of, like I would be like, really? Because I'm under like a rock right now. I'm in a total fog. Um, know that that time will come. And I'm a big time manifester, actually. I feel like some of these things are very subliminal. So if you have a vision board and you have your dreams kind of on there, like I had this dream house of ours and we're living in it now. Like my son actually told me, he's like, it's just like the vision board. I was like, I know, we made this happen 2 years later, but we're walking the halls of the picture that is on the board. I envisioned my kids. When my husband and I were married and we're trying, I wanted kids. I had a pink booty and a blue booty parents magazine cut out right in the middle of my board because it was just like kids. And lo and behold, I had a girl and a boy, twins. Like it's just, I really do think that if you ask, it will come. You shall receive. But know that it's not going to happen on your timeline. That's where you surrender.
Yeah, one of my best friends, Laura, told me just yesterday, ironically, that her lifelong mentor had made the comment that, like, to her and coached her, saying, Laura, you are a highly successful person. You're going to make this vision happen for yourself. And it just because you are who you are and that you are so capable, but you will still make that happen even if you take some breathing room right now. So like
Yes.
take that for yourself because that's something that most people don't create the space for. Like they don't create the space to slow down at all. And that doesn't
Exactly.
mean that you're not going to get your dream, that you're not going to build and accomplish, because you will, because of who you are. But
Right.
you can have both. You can have the breathing room and the success.
Yes. Yes. And it's
So,
that much sweeter because then you're like, I'm so glad I gave myself that.
right.
And, you're never going to say, oh, I regret, spending too much time with my kids or my family, or I regret I spent too much time doing things that filled my cup and our self care. You're
That's
not going
it.
to regret that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to the lightning round questions and wrap this up. So I ask everyone that I host three questions. The first one is, what is your go-to stress busting activity?
Yes, I have a few. So one really quick one is a hot shower. Oh my goodness. There's times where I'm just like, I'm in a mood, I'm not happy, but like as soon as I wash my hair and, blow dry and come out, I'm like, I'm alive again. So that's like a very quick one. Sometimes it's being out in nature. I do believe in grounding, having your feet and toes touch the grass just makes you feel like you're part of something so much bigger. Mother Earth is really, really powerful. It's something that I learned through my 15 years of Indian classical dance and why we dance actually barefoot for that reason. So being outside, and then there's also journaling. There are times where I feel like I have talked too much. I overanalyze, I overthink. Even when you're, in an argument, you're just stating your case 10 different ways. When you're actually in silence and you write your thoughts out, and I'm talking, journal and pen, um, there is a release and an outlet from that. So I like to just spend 5 minutes meditating and then writing out my thought. And Morning Pages, or By the Artist's Way, is a great book. You can do that every morning, and write out your dreams and look for patterns. It's really cool.
That is. Thank you for sharing that. Well, speaking of books, what's the last book or podcast you really loved or geeked out on?
Yes. So let's see. For book, I'm so glad we already talked about Sahil Bloom's Five Types of Wealth. That was awesome. Another one is a dear, dear friend of mine. I'm so lucky to call her friend, Dr. Sue Varma's Practical Optimism. And she has distilled all of her work as a psychiatrist. She worked with 9/11 survivors, and those who lost first responders. And she has a practice. So she sees patients all the time and as a psychiatrist, she's seeing patients all the time. So she's helping those in her career. And she's also on TV a lot. So if you Google her, you'll see her on the Today Show, GMA, Tamron, like she's everywhere. Her book, Practical Optimism, is where she takes her own life story as a burnt out med student, and all the tricks she needed to learn. And a lot of it was from her dad. When she lost her mom to breast cancer and he became a widow, he was still optimistic in life. And she was like, oh my goodness, like this, it's like, what's in the water? Like, how do you get to be this way? Because it's very rare to still want to wake up in the morning and make a difference when you're in those lows and depths. And she just created it into a framework. So she has 8 pillars of practical optimism. And I'll share a few of them with you now because they are really interesting. There's purpose, problem solving, pride, proficiency, present, people, practicing healthy habits, processing emotions. So these are all things that it's just like, practically speaking, when you're like, how do I emotionally regulate something as parents that we're trying to teach our kids all the time? This will help you.
I love that. And wrote it down to read myself. I will also link this one in the show notes. Okay, last but not least, if you could wave a magic wand, what task would you eliminate forever?
The dishwasher.
Ah, well, the good news is you have 3 kids. So
Yes, they actually do that. I mean, maybe not. Maybe yeah, there's certain things that it's like, do we want an R2D2 robot doing that for us? I don't know. Like I love that we could eventually have like full on Jetsons. We already are doing video calls and drive electric cars. But yeah, I think that like some menial chores, if they could just be taken care of. But as a like counter to that, I do have like we have chores in our family, and the dishes and laundry is like a non-negotiable for the kids once they were of age. Our youngest was 4 when he learned. And so we teach them, we put the soap, but we teach them how to move it from the washer to the dryer. They take it out, they put it in the hamper, they fold each and every like item of clothing and put it away in their drawers, Marie Kondo style. It's kind of amazing. It was just a lot of training. They need the fine motor skills, but they get there. There's things you can use to help. There's these laundry folders that are plastic, and you just put
Oh
the
yeah.
yeah a shirt on there, and it kind of you can make it a game, and gamifying is great. But then they have to put it away in their drawers. I feel like that's a cycle that we have to live with, and I am not the one sole person responsible of this family of five's laundry anymore. It was all thanks to my husband who thought of it. He's like, we need to make them do it. But eventually, to give them a break, yeah, if there was a robot who could do it, we all get to like put our feet up.
Yeah, no kidding. I also dream of some of the Jetson style life. But maybe one of these, it's amazing that we have self-driving cars. Who would have
I
ever thought? So
know, I
perhaps
know.
we're really not that far away.
Yes, yes, exactly. I can you
Okay.
imagine if we were in the high towers and I don't know. It's just yeah, that was such a fun show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sure was. Okay, Kanika, it has been my absolute pleasure. Last question. How do people reach you? And tell them about your
Yes.
podcast too.
Oh, thank you, Courtney. Yeah, so you can reach me on Instagram or LinkedIn, where I'm most active with DMs. My handle is at Kanika Chadda-Gupta. And you can listen to my podcasts on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. We're very video first. It's called That's Total Mom Sense. And you can visit my website, that's totalmomsense.com. And I'll give you my team email too, because I really do love helping, mentoring, and anywhere I can. And that's totalmomsense@gmail.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I will link all of the good stuff in the show notes, including how you can reach Kanika and how you can access the books that we talked about here. But in the meantime, small business is hard. So if you have been tuning in for a while, if you can do me the solid of sharing this with a friend, subscribing, rate and review us, that would be fantastic. You can connect with me at Working Moms Movement on Instagram. But until next time, friends, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, Mama.